Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. We start our news bulletin with a sad and unfortunate incident in Pakistan where at least 73 people have been killed and over 40 others injured after a train caught fire near southern city of Rahim Yar Khan. Police say a gas cylinder on board the Tezgam Express exploded en route from Karachi to Rawalpindi. However, Pakistan Railways officials say the cause is still being investigated. Railways officials say the explosion destroyed 3 of the train's passenger carriages. They say passengers were cooking breakfast on board using the gas cylinder when it exploded. After the blast, several carriages caught fire and have been decoupled from the train. Railways Minister Sheikh Rashid says firefighting and rescue operations are underway. Pakistan military troops, including doctors and paramedics, are also facilitating the rescue operation. Pakistan and China have rejected the bifurcation of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir into 2 union territories. The territory was divided into Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh after India revoked Article 370 on the 5th of August. Pakistan's Foreign Office said the move is a violation of the United Nations Security Council resolutions and the bilateral agreements. It said Jammu and Kashmir is an internationally recognized disputed territory and India cannot change its status quo unilaterally. China has also called the division unlawful and said the move affects its sovereignty. The valley has been under curfew and communications blackout for the last 88 days. Over 1,000 Indian Sikh pilgrims have arrived in Pakistan to celebrate the 550th birthday of the founder of Sikhism. The pilgrims will visit Gurdwara Kartarpur in Narwal district, which is the birthplace of Baba Guru Nanak Dev. More in this report.
In the first cultural exchange of its kind, a religious procession of Sikh pilgrims called Nagar Kirtan crossed the Wagah border. The procession ferry consists of specially crafted gold-plated palanquin that weighs 200 kilograms and carries Sikhism's religious texts. It will be placed at the birthplace of Baba Guru Nanak in Narwal district. Pakistan welcomes the Nagar Kirtan as a gesture of goodwill.
We will go to Nankana Sahib, Panja Sahib, Sacha Sauda and all the Gurdwaras, which will be open to visit. It is a wonderful feeling and an exciting moment. We are excited to go to Nankana Sahib.
Pakistan has made special arrangements to facilitate the Sikh pilgrims' stay in the country. Prime Minister Imran Khan will also inaugurate the Kartarpur corridor on the 9th of November. The project will establish a visa-free link between Darbar Sahib in Kartarpur and the Dera Baba Nanak's shrine in India's Punjab.
Now moving on, a Pentagon report has revealed the US conducted over 1,100 airstrikes in Afghanistan in September. The report says American forces conducted 40 airstrikes a day last month. The report said over 800 strikes were conducted in August, while over 500 were launched in July. US forces in Afghanistan have not reported the number and the types of aircraft or the bombs dropped in each strike. Washington says the strikes continue to apply judicious military pressure on the Taliban. The Human Rights Watch says CIA-backed forces are committing illegal executions and other human rights abuses with impunity. In a report, the international rights body said the forces are killing civilians during botched night raids. The report said in many cases, the raids were accompanied by airstrikes, killing civilians indiscriminately or disproportionately. The report also highlights 14 instances of serious war crimes by CIA-backed strike groups from late 2017 to mid-2019. It said sometimes troops detained men and didn't tell their families where they were being held. The report said these forces are involved in serious violations of the laws of war, some amounting to war crimes in every Afghan province. South Korea claims North Korea has fired 2 projectiles into the sea between the Korean peninsula and Japan. In a statement, South Korea's military said the weapons were launched from the South Pyongan province eastward into the sea. Japan's Coast Guard said that the projectiles appear to be missiles and landed outside Japan's exclusive economic zone. It is the 12th time that the nuclear-armed North has carried out a major weapons test this year. The last test by Pyongyang was a submarine-launched ballistic missile fired from a platform in the sea on October the 2nd. The launch comes in the midst of a deadlock on nuclear talks between South Korea and the US. China says discussions with the US on reaching a trade agreement are going well. The Commerce Ministry says Beijing and Washington have decided to take the process further. The ministry says trade negotiators from both the countries will hold their round of telephone negotiations on Friday. Earlier, the US said it will consider extending tariff exclusions on $34 billion worth of Chinese imports. President Donald Trump has previously hinted at the possibility of an agreement with Chinese President Xi Jinping at a summit in November. But the summit's cancellation because of continuing mass protests in the host nation, Chile, has raised new barriers to the talks. U.S. House committees have asked former White House National Security Advisor John Bolton to testify in their impeachment inquiry. The Democratic-led investigation into President Trump has set November 7 as the date for Bolton's appearance. Bolton's attorney, Charles Cooper, says his client will not appear without a subpoena. The rush of possible new witnesses comes as the House prepares to take its first official vote on continuing the probe today. This will include public hearings and the possibility of drafting articles of impeachment against the president. Trump has dismissed the Democrat-led impeachment probe as a witch hunt and a lynching. In Mongolia, police in the capital of Ulaanbaatar have arrested 800 Chinese citizens in Provianto, a cybercrime ring. Officials say they have also confiscated hundreds of computers and SIM cards. Head of the General Intelligence Agency of Mongolia, Jackolantern, said they raided 4 locations after 2 months of investigation. He said the detained individuals were involved in illegal gambling, fraud, computer hacking, identity theft, and money laundering. All of the 800 Chinese citizens in detention arrived in Mongolia on 30-day tourist visas. In a statement, the Chinese embassy in the capital said it will cooperate with the Mongolian police. In Syria, a car bomb explosion has killed 8 people in a busy market in the northwestern city of Afrin. Rescue officials said 30 others were wounded in the attack.
Earlier this month, the United States withdrew its troops from northwestern Syria for Turkey's military operation against Kurdish fighters. Turkey launched the offensive to establish a safe zone and repatriate nearly 200,000 Syrian refugees. But it halted the operation after signing separate deals with Washington and Moscow to push the Kurd fighters out of the proposed safe zone. Meanwhile, the US forces patrolled the Syria-Turkey border in the first such move since Washington withdrew its troops from the area. Earlier, rival sides in Syria's long-running civil war met for the first time in Geneva to work out a new governing agreement. This is the 150 government and opposition delegates' first constitutional committee meeting. UN Special Envoy on Syria, Geir Pedersen, said the formation of a constitution is the first step towards a political process. But he said no senior members of the government or the opposition are part of the committee. He said the process will lead to UN-supervised elections. The country has been mired in a civil war since 2011. According to the United Nations, over 600,000 people have been killed in the fighting.
In Iraq, security forces killed 1 protester and wounded over 50 others as anti-government protests continue. The protester was killed when security forces fired a tear gas canister into his chest. The protesters are demanding an end to corruption and unemployment. Over 250 people have been killed in clashes with the security forces since protests began earlier this month. NATO has told Russia to withdraw all of its troops from eastern Ukraine's Donbas region after Kiev's forces pulled out. Praising Ukraine's move, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg said some Moscow-backed troops are in the region. Stoltenberg says the withdrawal will help reduce tensions between the two countries. He says after the withdrawal, Ukraine and Russia will be able to solve the conflict peacefully. But he says here is a long way to go before that happens.
But of course, NATO also states very clearly that Russia has a special responsibility to implement the Minsk agreements and that they must withdraw all their troops, all their officers from eastern Ukraine and stop destabilizing eastern Ukraine.
Hungary says it will help stabilize Russian relations with the EU and NATO. During his meeting with President Putin, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban pledged to play the role of a mediator. He said Hungary's cooperation with Russia was a win for all, including the EU and NATO. Orban said his country's geographic position makes cooperation with the larger powers unavoidable. During the meeting, Orban signed bilateral agreements and said Hungary will continue to boost ties with Moscow.
Hungary is a NATO and EU member and will stay so. But that does not exclude that in certain questions we engage in cooperation with Russia. That's what we endeavor to do and will continue to do.
More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned with Indus News. In Spain, hundreds of students have set up a protest camp in Barcelona over the jailing of Catalan separatist leaders. Protesters are demanding a second vote on the region's independence. Catalan's 7 public universities have also condemned the sentencing and called for the immediate release of the separatist leaders. Protests have rocked the region since Catalan separatist leaders were jailed on October the 14th for their role in the 2017 independence referendum. Over 200 people were injured in the violent protests. Spain's main parties have consistently rejected any moves towards Catalonia's secession. The UN has suspended Ebola screenings in South Sudan after 3 of its aid workers were killed during clashes. The International Organization for Migrants, the IOM, has halted operations at 5 border posts. In a statement, the organization said its volunteers were caught in crossfire during clashes in South Sudan's central Equatoria region. It said 2 other volunteers suffered injuries and are recovering from the gunshot wounds. IOM Director General Antonio Vitorino said humanitarians and civilians should never suffer due to such acts of violence. The recent Ebola outbreak in the Congo has killed over 2,000 people since August 2018. In Zimbabwe, women are revolutionizing the way the world looks at conservation through a unique all-female anti-poaching unit. The foundation Akashinga, meaning brave ones, has been training vulnerable women from local villages to become elite game rangers since 2017. This report has more.
This is Hell Week, a brutal physical and mental challenge designed to leave only the best game rangers standing. Among the strictly female group is Chiavetso Motero. Married at a young age, she moved with her husband and small child to South Africa, where she was physically abused by her mother-in-law. Chiavetso eventually returned to rural Zimbabwe with very few prospects.
My husband is in South Africa now. She don't even sending money for the child. I'm going to take care. They took my documents. I'm here to empower myself to take care of my child.
The 22-year-old is one of 160 women picked from an initial 500 to take part in the ranger selections. Ultimately, only around 80 will make it into the ranks of the wildlife rangers, known as the Akashinga or the Brave One. The initiative in northern Zimbabwe is run by the International Anti-Poaching Foundation, created in 2009 by Australian sniper Damien Mander.
What we've found with this program is the women's ability to naturally de-escalate tension and work with the communities that they come from. We're not having a war with the local community, and the government hasn't had to make a choice between conservation or communities. And in so many ways, women have become the bridge that conservation had to build into these communities.
In the 16 years before the program was launched, 8,000 elephants were killed in this area. Since the rangers' arrival 2 years ago, elephant poaching has dropped by 80%. In this time, the women made 115 arrests without a single shot fired.
Twitter says it will ban all political advertisements on its platform. CEO Jack Dorsey says he has come to believe political reach should be earned and not bought. Dorsey says he has realized paying for reach on Twitter and Facebook has significant ramifications for civil discourse. He said it also gives advertisers an unfair advantage and helps to proliferate targeted and misleading messages. Twitter's policy on the new ban will be implemented on November 22nd. Meanwhile, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg has defended his company's political adverts policy, calling it freedom of expression. The Great Jackolantern Blaze has become one of the largest Halloween events in the U.S. New York's Hudson Valley is hosting the historic show to mark this year's Halloween. This report has more. The Great Jack-O-Lantern Blaze, now in its 15th year, is a Halloween extravaganza. It features more than 7,000 illuminated jack-o'-lanterns, all designed and hand-carved by artisans.
And as you can see, it's not just individual triangle eyes pumpkins. It is very elaborate displays, including a working carousel, including dinosaurs, the Statue of Liberty, planetarium. There's a whole bunch of really cool stuff going on.
Organizers estimate the event will host 180,000 visitors this year. New to the Great Jack-O-Lantern Blaze is an immersive display of the Headless Horseman Bridge.
The Headless Horseman Bridge is an installation at the Great Jackolantern Blaze, and it's an homage to the fact that this is the 200th anniversary of the publication of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the very famous ghost story written by Washington Irving.
The event runs through the 30th of November. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned with Indus News. Most Asian stocks have risen in early trading over the U.S. Federal Reserve's interest rate cut over 25 basis points. The indices witnessed fresh momentum as investor sentiments were lifted by progress in the U.S.-China trade talks and strong earnings. The Shanghai Composite is trading a fraction lower as factory activity in the country contracted for the sixth straight month. South Korea's Kospi is trading at nearly 1% higher. Hong Kong's Hang Seng has also picked up over 1% due to attractive stock valuations. Following the trend, Tokyo's Nikkei 225 has also gained nearly 0.5%. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.